Something that I would like you to understand very much is autonomy and responsibility. This video is called Autonomy in the Tree of Life or in the Tree of the Knowledge of Good and Evil. It is well agreed upon the world over by the majority of people. I know there are those who don't. But the majority of people will agree that free will and autonomy and responsibility are inherently human traits. That's the way God created us. That's the way we are. It's a beautiful thing. It's valuable. Ask anybody the world over, that they will agree. Not anybody, but the majority of people, okay? And I used to be one of them. And I still am to a degree, but here's what I would like you to consider. Originally, God created human beings with autonomy, which has free will and responsibility in it, but without the knowledge of good and evil. So yes, they were created to use their autonomy and their free will and their freedom to choose, but they were never created to do it having the knowledge of good and evil. They were only created to do it in the realm of life, which was eating from the tree of life, which is God himself. So when people talk about the value of autonomy, which they should, because it's a valuable thing because God created it, and the value of free will and responsibility, which we should because they are valuable things, it's very unique to his creation. He hasn't created any of the other animals with that. We don't know about other planets and solar systems and universes. Who knows, right? We just don't know yet. But we know that we have it. So yes, it is a highly valuable thing. But the thing that bothers me is when people value it so highly within the current state of the reality that we find ourselves in the world, having all of us as a human race left the tree of life, God and Christ himself, and eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, over here, you have autonomy on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which potentially can equal a lot of good, okay, if you make good choices with your autonomy. But on the other hand, if you don't make good choices with your autonomy, which most of us discover sooner or later, but some of us don't, that's reality. Everybody's different, right? I'm not trying to lump everybody into the same box here because that's impossible to do on most things, on a lot of things. But so autonomy in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil means, well, I can choose what's good and right and enjoy the benefits over here, or I can choose what's wrong and evil and destroy myself and others. Okay? And we've seen that happen the world over. And people use free will and autonomy as a reason to explain why people do stupid things. Okay? And they're right. However, what they're forgetting is that originally we were created to use autonomy. We were created as autonomous beings, and we were created with a free will and responsibility. However, we were never meant to use it on that tree. We were never meant to have this distinction, this split, this dualism. White wolf, black wolf. Feed one or feed the other. Yin and yang. You can't have good without evil. It was never meant to be this way. And I know it's hard for people to swallow because we've all been raised in it. We've all been brainwashed. We've all been trained. We've all been trained, not brainwashed. We've all been trained and conditioned to live in the good and evil reality world. I mean, it's everywhere. You can escape it. But the point I'm saying is that it's the reality that we're born into this world, and since everybody around us lives in it, they teach us to live in it, and they train us and they condition us to live in it as well. However, the alternative Okay, so you have autonomy and free will and responsibility on this side, on the tree of life, which is Christ himself and God himself and God's Spirit himself. Okay? Which are what? They are pure life, in whom is no evil, no bad, no doing anything wrong, ever, permanently, eternally. Okay? Now, I like that kind of autonomy. Like, there are a lot of smart people in the world who talk about risks. And they say, you can actually look this up. I don't like to drop names, but there's a well-known speaker who talks about risk, and I've heard him talk about risk. And he says, a measured risk is a smart risk because you know what you're going to lose, okay? Or you know what you could lose, okay? But a risk where you don't know what you can lose or you can lose too much is not a good risk. Okay? That's by somebody way smarter and more knowledgeable than me who teaches that. Okay? So, if I'm going to have autonomy and free will, the risk to myself and to the people around me is humongous. That is not a smart risk. Do I need to explain that to you? I don't think any of us need that explained, do we? I hope not. Okay? We've all experienced the consequences of such a big risk, okay? And people say, well, God risked giving people free will and responsibility and autonomy because it was worth it for him to have friends. Well, yes, but God's original design was not for us to have free will and autonomy and responsibility in the knowledge of good and evil. His original design was for us to have autonomy and free will and responsibility in the tree of life.